like link-ups and everything, won't you?
Just one YouTube today.
All right. Right. Where are we going? We get rid of that. Press on that. Start recording. Everything is magic. Have you got a theme word for tonight or a short title?
Disting. D-I-S-T-I-N-G.
Yeah, I had to Google that. I did not know that. Well, I thought you'd misspelt that.
No, not dusting, no.
And then when I Googled it, something came up and it was completely unrelated. I thought it was some kind of engineering thing. I don't know what it were. But I scrolled down 3 or 4 sort of listings, and there it was. So I was like, it is a thing. It is a heathen thing.
Oh, yes. A lovely heathen thing.
Oh, hang on. I pressed the wrong button there. Let me stop that and start again. Right, hang on. I'm all fingers and thumbs tonight.
That's because it's
cold.
Let
me start that again. It's because it's cold, yes. That's what I'll blame it onto. Everything is magic. Put separation in. Disting. So it's D-I-S-T-I-N-G, yes?
Yep.
Right. We're ready to rock and roll. So I'll do the countdown and press the start button, mute myself, and then it's over to you. So have a great show. See you at the end.
Okie dokie.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, hiya. We've got a few people here today, so nice to see you all. Hi, Anita, Carly, and I am Kevin Canuck. Interesting. So tonight, on tonight's show, I'm going to be talking about disting, or what's also known as old disting, as well as many other names. So you might have heard of disting, you might have never heard of disting, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of Burns Night. You heard of Burns Night? In commemoration to Robert Burns, the poet. So as usual, the naughty Christians have kind of moved the original, the original idea and the original celebration to kind of the end of January, and they've kind of cobbled it together with with Burns Night, but I'll get into that later. So you might have heard of Burns Night, at least. If not, you might have heard of disting or old disting. So where does this come from? Where does this come from? This is a Viking tradition. So it's a Swedish thing. And it's a very ancient heathen spring celebration. So you might be thinking, well, hang on, Ange. If it's spring, why is it in January? Because we're not seeing anything going on yet in terms of springtime. Certainly not getting warmer. But that goes back to the naughty Christians. But I'll get into that later. So this is prehistoric. This is a prehistoric celebration. Yeah. So when you think about it, yeah, when I was sitting on the toilet, I was thinking, why was it such a big deal? Because this is a big deal. Yeah, disting is a big deal. Well, if you think about it, yeah, our ancient ancestors, whether they were alien or not, after the winter solstice and the return of the sun, which is what I talked about last week, the light of the world, which we're still in at the moment, I think we're still in that. I can't get my calendar up, I don't think. Let me just have a look. Good old Google. So when you really think about it, our ancient ancestors, they wouldn't have had all these, indoor lighting, apart from candles, and things like, I don't know, TVs. They didn't have all these distractions, if you like. They didn't have light all year round, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yes, we're still in Yule, but the light of the world ended just before Epiphany. Yeah, I should remember that because I talked about it last week. But we're in late Yule at the moment. Okay, so that clears that up. So the dog is making funny noises at me. Don't do that. He wants to join in. He wants to get on my lap, but that's not happening. So yeah. So when you think about it, the return of the sun would have been extremely important to our ancient ancestors, because although it might look like the days aren't getting longer right now, they kind of are. It's not getting dark quite so early. The sun is quite strong at the moment. I don't know if you've noticed that. So it would have been a big deal. So Disting originally would have been, they reckon, probably either in February or March. Now, you would think they would know that, yeah? But when you look at how the calendars have all been mashed up and changed, and, you know, they have to add days here and bits here just to make it work, yeah? If you're going with the phases of the moon, yeah, which is the calendar that I was working on last year. I'm going to go back to it, though, because this research I did today has kind of made me realize, yeah, these things, although they are not static, but they are regular in terms of, you know, the moon is quite regular in what she does, yeah. So originally, Disting was held on the third full moon after the new moon of the winter solstice. So I thought, hang on a minute, what do you mean, the new moon of the winter solstice? So the winter solstice, here we go, here's another strip back the layer, yeah? So is the winter solstice actually on the day that we're told? And I think we're in last week's after show chat, we were talking about this, about actually looking at an app that actually shows you the daylight hours, yeah, and actually working out from that when is the actual longest night, because it might not actually be when we are told, like a lot of these things, yeah. So and if the solstice is on the new moon, that kind of makes sense because it says new beginning, isn't it? Return of the sun, new beginning. So I'm definitely going to be investigating that one further. So this would make it in March, not February, which when I was doing my research, there's you know, some people say February, some people say March, the Christians say January. It's really interesting how this has been moved about. But essentially, it's a celebration of the return, not just the return of the sun, but the return of the warmth. Yeah. So it is connected to the winter solstice, and it's certainly connected to the light of the world, which is what I spoke about last week. But it's like another layer there, because this was all about, so for the Vikings, this was all about, you know, as soon as the land begins to thaw, yeah, and I mean thaw out, not thaw as in, you know, with the hammer. They can then start to prepare the land for growing, yeah. Now, you might ask the question, you know, why do we, you know, me and myself and Ian, mark this? Well, this little tiny island has been so-called invaded by, although I have to question that as well, because, immigration, as it is at the moment, was probably like this. Well, it's been like it for donkey's years, I imagine. So you have to kind of raise an eyebrow at, were they invited here? Did they invade or were they invited? I know that at some point they were given land. So were they invited, these Vikings, these naughty Vikings? Yeah. So they would have brought those traditions with them. They might have changed, the date, because obviously the weather here is very different to the weather up in Scandinavia. So maybe that's why Disting was moved about. So this was definitely a big deal in terms of celebrating the return of the warmth. So not just the light, but the warmth. So they could then start preparing for growing their food. But it's also a time to honor the Disting. So this is the female goddesses, the ancient female goddesses, but also the ancestral spirits who watch over their descendants and kind of act like spirit guides, which kind of makes sense because at this time where we are still in this wintry kind of energy, where the veil is not, I'd say the veil is not as, it's not as thin as it is on the solstice, but it's thinner than it is through the rest of the year. That's my take on it. So it makes sense that you're honoring your ancestors at this time. Yeah. So during Disting, the people from all over Sweden would come together for 9 days. 9 days. This is like their original heathen celebration to honor the Disting, determined laws, and hold markets and just generally come together. Yeah. So later on, when the Christians arrived, the Disting market was shortened to 3 days. So this whole gathering was shortened. That's that constriction, yeah, the restriction. And this is a key part. It was moved to February the 2nd, which they call Candlemas. For us, that's Imbolc, yeah. And then in 1895, Disting was abolished. It was abolished. But this market festival, kind of a little bit under the radar, continued on. And this was actually officially revived in 2000 by the Nordic ASAR community. And in 2023, they held a Disablock ceremony on March the 12th, just north of where the original celebrations would have taken place, Uppsala, I think it's called. So it's now kind of more of a cultural thing than a pagan thing. But again, it's in February, so it's moved. So, is there a little bit of a Christian thing going on there? Maybe. So I find that quite interesting that it does move. And it could just be that if you're going by purely lunar calendar, so that would be between either. So what you need to do is you need to either find the longest day and the longest night and then work around those, or you work around the equinoxes, either way, or you get all four and then you work out using the moon when these things fall. I don't know if that makes sense. It makes sense to me. And that was part of the experiment I was doing with this calendar of the Mona, which is moon in Old English. Because I really wanted to see if these things actually fell when we are told they fall, or if they are completely out. And I think that might be part of what this is. So any time between the end of January and the end of March is when Disting is, and that's quite a large chunk of time for, you know, for this. I don't know. It's just fascinating for me. Anyway, so Disting is also a time for giving thanks for the previous blessings of the last year. And also, you know, because in the planning of what you're going to grow, that's making plans, yeah. Honoring the dead, making offerings to the gods. So the main god that they venerated at this point was Freyr, which is not Freya, it's Freyr. So this is a god as opposed to Freya, who's the goddess, yeah. So Freyr was I think that's how you pronounce it. Don't laugh at me. He was the ruler of fertility, peace, and prosperity. So, so I've already talked about that. Yeah, so it was a time it was also a time for the Vikings to start planning their seafaring journeys, and with that the trade that they would do, because all the time that it was cold, they'd be, you know, on their homesteads, for want of a better word, you know, doing the things that you do in the winter, you know, sort of pickling your food, because they eat a lot of pickled stuff, don't they? I like pickled onions, but that's about it. So, yeah, it's definitely a celebration of the beginning of new season of growth and prosperity. So, yeah, deities. So Freya is also in there. I don't know how to pronounce these properly, so bear with me. Idun for a fruitful season. Ea for healing and growth. Can't read that. Sunna for the sun. Frigg for the hearth. Thor for a good harvest and prosperity. Thor and Sif together for sustenance. And Freyr for betrothal and fertility. So you can see just from those particular deities, you know, what this meant to our ancient Viking ancestors, because I'm pretty sure most people on this island have some kind of Viking link somewhere. So I've already done that bit. Hang on, because I've got different notes here. Hearth fire. So it's kind of carrying on this idea of the fire. So it kind of starts with Samhain for us, fire festival, obviously winter solstice, fire festival. This isn't part of the wheel of the year, but there are so many magical landmarks, signposts in that wheel of the year that aren't officially recognized, if you get what I mean. But this was another marking using fire because it's light and it's warmth. Yeah. And also, so part of the honouring of the dead and your ancestors is through song. Yeah. And we know the Vikings were big on, songs and drums and all that stuff. So that comes in as well. And it's really interesting because, pardon me, the way that we've been marking it for quite a few years now has been through poetry and song. So whether that's, we have some people round and we do something, or whether we, sometimes we just do it live on YouTube, that's how we've been marking it. But it's actually a lot more than kind of what we've been looking at it, if that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, another really interesting little side note. So disting is obviously, about planning and preparing for planting. Yeah. But it was also a time when the cattle were counted. Yeah. And your wealth was tallied, which is why it has this link to being a festival of prosperity and abundance. Yeah. It was said that new calves born during disting were a sign of great prosperity for the coming year. Disting was also, because the word at the end, ting, actually is called the thing, not was it John Carpenter? Not that film, not that idea of the thing. That's quite grim, actually. But this was around a gathering. So again, it's that idea of gathering. So this is actually a thing that it was called the thing, yeah, as opposed to a blot. Now I've just completely confused you, I know. So a blot. What is a blot? A blot is a marking of a time of offering or sacrifice, because the Vikings, and even I would probably say on this little island as well, there was sacrifice animals, usually when they were ploughing the land ready for planting. So a blot is offerings or a sacrifice to a god. Yeah. Whereas this was not a blot. This is a thing. Which is a gathering. Yeah. So they're different. And what would come with the blot would be ritual. Big ritual. Yeah. Whereas this was just a gathering of people doing a few bits and pieces, selling your stuff. I love it. It was also called Charming of the Plough. I love that. And this was after the Anglo-Saxon spells and ceremonies that they would do. So, part of that, I'm assuming, was the sacrificial nature of, to the gods, if you like. And obviously there was feasting. There's always feasting. You can't have some kind of a gathering and celebration without feasting. It wouldn't be that if there was no feasting. So I'll get rid of that one now. Okay, so how do we mark it? So obviously, we've been marking this particular time with poetry and song, just having fun, really. If you don't want to do that, if you just want to light a candle, In honor of your Disir, which is your ancestors, then you can do that. You can build like a little altar and, light a candle. You can tell stories of honorable tales of the Disir, your ancestors. Yeah. You can cook their favorite meal and maybe set aside a portion of that as an offering. If you want to, you can light a fire in a fire pit in your garden, or if you're really brave, a bonfire. And you can even, if you're kind of into conversing with those who have passed, you can have conversations with them. Now is the time to do that while the veil is still thin-ish. Yeah. Other ways that you can mark this occasion. And it's really interesting because we don't take any of our Yule deckies down until just before the 21st. So ours are still up. So our greenery is still up. So one of the symbols and traditions of this time of Disting is to decorate the home with greenery. So evergreens, which obviously symbolizes, it's not so much the coming of the spring, but the continual cycle. That's how I see that. And new growth, obviously. And obviously for the Vikings, this was also, and I'll probably argue, because we live on a tiny little island, we were probably doing the same thing, because you can't be on a tiny little island and not travel in boats to trade. Just putting it out there. So this idea of, that your trade is done by traveling in a boat, however far you're going. So you have this, the new season of being able to do that. So it's new trade, it's new journeys. So it's all new. This is a celebration of the new. Yeah. So obviously, yes, I said food and feasting. So for the Vikings, this would have been pickled things like herrings and things of that nature. Also, lingonberry sauce. I don't know what a lingonberry is. If anyone out there knows what a lingonberry is, please let me know. But these are all things that were easy to preserve and store, whether that was taking them on your boat when you're going off on your journey of trade, or whether it's just, just food to see through the winter. The other thing that Disting is all about is presents. So giving gifts was a big thing, yeah, at this time. But especially between traders. So it's like you when you order something, yeah, and you get a little free gift in there, you're like, oh wow, that's really nice. I'm going to go and shop with them again. Same thing, yeah. That's what they would do. They would gifts would flow between traders and seafarers in order to ensure that future trade was not guaranteed, but that people would come back and buy from them. And I love that. I think that's really cool. So candle lighting, I've already mentioned that, to do with your ancestors, and it's also connected to bringing back the light, the warmth, The return of the sun, and the start of the new, yeah, which is interesting when you look at when this originally was, which is in March. A lot of pagans consider March to be the new year. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. So back then, obviously, they were the slaughtering of animals as offerings. So this was a way to honor the god Freyr, yeah, who was about the fertility of the land. So that was what that was all about, yeah. But also to ensure the bountiful harvest and also the trade. They would also be for protection, because obviously, if you're traveling on a boat on the sea, it's a bit dangerous. In my view, it is anyway. Some people go, it's nothing, but for me, it's a bit dangerous. So obviously, they would ask, and Thor is the one that they would go to for protection on the sea, as well as the growing of their food, whatever it was they were growing. So Disting, I mean, I can't speak for, those Scandinavian countries, but for us, it's definitely around, obviously, food, music, poetry. I don't know if we've ever done the exchange of gifts, but that might be something that I can quite happily introduce. But it's still alive and kicking, that's for sure, especially in the Nordic countries. I don't know that it's necessarily got. It's a bit like I don't know, with the distortion of Christianity that's been placed over all these ancient pagan rites, on a bad word. I don't know. I think things just lose a little bit unless you can kind of keep those traditions, I suppose. Traditions, probably not the best word, but you know what I mean. Keeping those ideas alive, those kind of ways of being, magic, yeah, magic. I talked about that. See here, it says it's. Oh, hello.
I was just going to jump in and just say, are you open for a few questions?
Yes, I've got a little bit more, and then
right,
definitely,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to make sure because we've got some new people jumping in and out, and I just thought if you've got a few minutes for Q&A, so do you want to save that for the end?
Yeah, I'll leave about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. Yeah.
No worries. Right, I'll shut up and go back.
So yeah, in this particular article, it talks about it being in February. So there's this huge kind of no one can agree when it was or when it is. So I'd say, if you wanted to mark this Disting, or Old Disting as it's also known, because I think we do it 25th and 26th of January. So that's nowhere near spring. Nowhere near. But I think it's really it's a nice time to do it, because if you can gather some people around and share poetry and we don't have an open fire, but it'd be nice to do that. You know, I put a fire scene on the telly. But it's just nice to gather, yeah, and share poetry, do some singing, get the drums out, because although the light has returned, it's still quite dark. So just bring people up a bit. I think that's what it's about, for us as much as anything, is sharing that enthusiasm for life, which kind of gets a bit, I think, after what people call Christmas. There's a drop, so I think it's nice to do that. I'm just going to read this little bit. This is interesting, actually. So this article by, has it got their name on it? Someone called Robert Sass. He says, to be blunt, Christianity moved Yule to be on the Julian calendar, solstice of December 25th, to stamp out heathen Yule and bring heathens into Christmas. They made Disting to be at the same time as Candlemas, February 2nd. And there's another blot, actually. Sigurblot was swallowed by Christian Easter. So a lot of, these heathen practices have been swallowed, or tried to be swallowed, by Christianity. I don't think it quite worked, but but there's lots of stuff out there if you want to go and look at blots, and it's a bit like the Wheel of the Year, but there are fewer of them. There aren't many. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Was there anything? I don't think there was anything else. I just think it's really interesting that no one can agree when it is, which I find quite interesting in terms of the moon cycles, and that these dates probably are not static. They move, which is why you have any time between the end of January and the end of March is when Disting is. Find that fascinating. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to shut up, and if anyone does have any questions, feel free to ask.
I have a question. Would this predate the Druids?
I don't know. I mean, if the Druids come over from Europe, so to speak, that's a good question.
I will try and remember this and ask Douglas. Douglas, who does the show with Jackie, last night, every fortnight on the Scribing Journeys. Douglas is a druid. A member of the druid.
He is. Oh, he fascinating. Is indeed. I saw this movie called The Last Druid, and I wanted to go with the guy over to the old country just to save the knowledge of the Druids, because I thought, the Last Druid. Oh no, how are we going to save the information?
Yeah, no. In fact, I've just recently, I have a few books by Joanne van der Hoven, or whatever she's called. I can't remember her name exactly, but she's a female druid, and she's written several books. And I've just bought Zen for Druids. And,
excellent.
That's fascinating, because I heard Jesus also went up into that area and was taught in mystery school.
That's what we're told, anyway. Yeah. It's a spiritual thing. This is the thing. So things like the Disting, these are cultural celebrations that have evolved over hundreds and thousands of years, long before Jesus walked the face of the earth, doing his thing. And it's all about spirituality, not about religious indoctrination. Yeah. So if you've got a spiritual connection to the earth, then you have a direct link to the great creator, whoever that or whatever that might be, however many of them that there may be, because nowhere does it actually say that there's only one. You know, that's just mankind's assumption that there is only one creator.
Yeah.
So there are other men that have also said, or women that have also said that there are more than one. So it's your own individual spiritual inner standing, and your connection is that it's yours. And as a community, if you're surrounded by several people that believe and spiritually connect in the same way, then you're going to build cultural references and cultural traditions and cultures based on that knowledge of information. And if that knowledge and information comes from the stars, you're going to build on that. And over thousands of years.
It's your experience, isn't it? So I suppose you could say this is pre-Druid, because, you know, the first people who, you know, noticed that, oh, okay, it's getting dark really early. Oh my God, it's getting really cold. And then all of a sudden the light returns. You're going to celebrate the return of that, aren't you? You know, you know, the return of the warmth, the return of the light. So I'd say it's this is like pre-history, if you like.
Yeah, well, it's when
it might not. They wouldn't have called it Disting, obviously, but there would have been something in place that marks that point. Definitely.
Even before we started sort of planting grains, and we were just hunter-gatherers.
Yeah,
we would know that by this time of the year, a lot of animals hibernate, and as the sun starts coming out for longer and the days start getting warmer, the animals would start to reappear, and we could go hunting to kill them for clothing and for food for the following winter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this could possibly be pre-Diluvian, like before the flood, even origins.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that, you know, the first people who were walking on this planet, who noticed that these cycles were happening, would have marked these cycles.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And being in different places and moving around as they would have done, that would have been a continuation of how that period of time stretched out.
Yeah.
Because when the sun rises here for me, it isn't necessarily, it might be 3 minutes later down the road elsewhere. So them kind of cycles, even if that's in a, I was having a wonderful musing, and thank you for that. It was wonderful. I'm going to continue without a doubt.
So it's very much dependent on your geography as well. That's another reason why, you know, so paganism is just amazing, because it's not fixed. I mean, well, we mark it in January because of the reasons I said, because I think it's nice to, you know, gather people together for a sing-song, bit of food, you know, to lift your spirits, because January can be quite difficult for people.
Well, I was just going to say, I were having this conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago, just before the winter solstice, with, I think, at one of the shows, and I sort of pointed out that whilst we give around the winter solstice, it's not the reason. There's many reasons, but partly the reason for that is that we know, or our ancestors knew, that it wasn't that period that was the struggle. The struggle was coming later at Imbolc, because that's when the food was running out. That's when things was dying off that you might have been saving, and that's why they would give food or make wooden toys, because there were things that would last. And there were more deaths on the month or 2 months prior to the spring celebration than there would have been in December or in the midwinter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it was to share provisions to provide for the community until the crops
the spring.
be planted.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wonderful tradition.
Which makes sense why, this was a gathering. Yeah, this is why this was a gathering, and
why that time changes. That freedom within that, because that travelling period, if you're saying, and we're looking at ships moving around an island, that's going to take time. So it needs to be flexible.
Yeah,
because you ain't going to say, "Fuck, that's ended." We can't continue to get together now and share our wares and our goods and have a jolly good time of warmth together.
Absolutely.
And I think once shipping came into play, all these ancient traditions moved around the world. Like India became something else, or Egypt then became something else, or Africa became something else.
Yeah.
But it all probably has a similar root or source,
which will be the earth itself.
And the love and the folks together. Oh, exciting! Happy days.
Oh yes.
I was going to say it then. Do you do your gift giving at Disting as well, or is that more of a sort of communal celebration with your nearest and dearest?
I don't know that we've ever done gifts on Disting. We've usually done some kind of, sing your lungs out kind of scenario.
So, I was just going to say, so is it like basically a giant sort of dark winter piss up to alleviate the stress and worry of the forthcoming starvational period?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, because the Vikings weren't known for their soberness, were they now?
No. Even as a child, I vividly remember being taught in primary school about the Vikings, and the phrase that always comes to mind from that teaching is that they were rapiers and pillagers. So they would come over and invade, raping and pillaging. And obviously, as a child, you don't really understand the enormity of that phrase.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I obviously realised it. But yeah, that's the picture that's been painted that was at a school that was a Catholic school that I was into. I was born into a Catholic family. Yeah. So yeah, I got all that sort of like given to me. So yeah, as far as I was aware, Vikings were these evil rapers and pillagers of villages, etc., etc. And it's obviously not until I got a bit older that I realised, a lot of this is just propaganda.
Absolutely.
That's been given and fed to us. Even as a child, I sort of sussed that out.
Yeah, so I put it out there. Were they invited here? Because
exactly,
if you're a seafaring island, you're going to trade, aren't you? That's it.
Would they be the Saxons? Would they be the Saxons from Anglo-Saxons, like from the north, or the Saxons more from Germany?
I'm not even convinced that there were such a people as the Saxons, that we were invaded. Francis Pryor, who I think most of his videos are up on YouTube, he puts forward a very interesting argument against this whole idea of the Saxons, that there's no evidence that we were ever invaded by anything called the Saxons.
So would they have just migrated across naturally through trade and...
Yeah, I think so.
Ships, being wrecked on the shoreline and then staying over here.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Rather than a mass invasion of like, we are going to invade that piece of land over there.
Yeah, because, I don't know, what would be the point if you want to trade or you want to settle on this island, yeah? I don't know. Why would you do it by force? You want to get those people on your side, don't you? I don't know.
It's interesting that you paint that picture, because that's exactly how, I don't know if you've seen the TV series Vikings.
Yes.
That's recently come out over the last few years. I'm not exactly sure of its timeline. But that is exactly the sort of imagery that they've portrayed in that TV series. That whilst they came over in a conquering sort of desire, eventually it became more of a we want to stay here and farm the land because our land back home's crap. We can't grow sod all.
Yeah.
So we would love it. So yeah, the bargains would be made with the indigenous population and the kings and the barons and such forth that would say, yeah, please stop killing, raping and pillaging us, and here's a bit of land and we can all live harmoniously.
So I wonder if the Romans built the wall to keep them out, the North.
Keep the Scots out. Well,
yeah, the Scots too. But,
yeah, and the Picts
because they were the whiskey drinkers.
Yeah. Well, the three nations that got pushed back from the original indigenous populations over centuries of migrations from mainland Europe ended up in Scotland, Wales, and Devon and Cornwall. Cornwall, especially, is renowned for its independence and its black and white flag. To say, yeah, you know, we're the original people that used to live in the land that we now call Angleland, and Wales is the same, and Scott is the same, and that's why they hate the English so much.
It's an amazing country. I went into the Admiral Benbow in Penzance, and this is where Admiral Nelson and Admiral Benbow planned the Battle of Trafalgar, and I thought, wow, I'm in a historical place. I felt like this is older than my country.
Just as a little side note, there's actually two walls. You got everyone talks about Hadrian's Wall. There's actually a second one. I don't know if it was ever finished, but I think that's further up. I don't think it ever got finished though.
All right.
I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, there's a second one that they tried to build.
Right. I've never heard of that one. Well, Wales naturally has the mountains, don't they? So that was the natural barrier there.
Yeah, definitely.
So but there we go.
Because when the Romans came over here, they were doing deals with some of the I forget what they were called. All the different tribes, their leaders. They were making deals with them. I'm guessing, but I don't know, that was, keep them quiet and you won't get killed, kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I remember learning about Rome and the sort of British part of it was they overextended, they became complacent, and the rot started from within, from the centre.
Yeah.
So whilst all roads lead to Rome, it was also the demise as well.
Yeah, but in Ireland, when I was there, in the Mourne Mountains, there's all these stone walls, short walls, but all made out of rocks. But I asked some Irishman there, why are all these walls? And he said, there used to be like clans or little kingdoms of ownership, right?
Yep.
Back then.
Yeah.
So that's all over the UK, all England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland. They all have clans or small kingdoms, and it was the uniting of the kingdoms under, I think it was under the Wessex banner.
Yes.
In England, that united them, and that's because they were always infighting and they were always fighting for land. And it was the same in Ireland. Ireland was no different. The culture, the people were still the same, and they were still.
Always reminds me of football, still.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of, I'm like, okay.
Football's a Catholic Protestant thing. If you ever look, most cities have two football teams, and one is blue and red traditionally. One's blue. So, for example, Manchester is Manchester City is blue, and Manchester United is red. Liverpool's the same. Everton is blue and Liverpool is red. And it was Protestant against Catholic.
Oh, my goodness.
So going back to the Scottish as well, that kind of happens there, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Scotland is notorious for what is it? What's the football teams up there? Celtic, it's pronounced Celtic, but it's spelt Celtic. And
I don't understand, Andy. It sends me
I've always puzzled over that. And Rangers, Glasgow Rangers, I think, was the other one. I think that's so one of them is the Catholics and the other one is the Protestants, and I can never remember which way around it is.
And I remember hearing a story about war, and they stopped and they had a game of football.
Yeah, that was in the First World War.
Yeah.
Well, that was,
like what?
On Christmas Day, I think, wasn't it?
That wanting to yearn to commune and be together, really, it can't be removed.
Yeah, in times of great hardship, you could say. Because like Andy said, at this time, the time that we're talking about of Disting, it's like the food stores are beginning to run out.
And you're coming back to what you were saying, and that they gifted that as well. Because if you're trading, that you've got this biggest stash of fucking money, if you've got no access to the food, so to speak, you can have all the money in the world. The principle still stays the same.
Yeah.
Can't eat gold.
Bringing it to you.
Yeah.
That's a gift in itself, even if you're trading that.
Yeah.
So
here's a question for you, just to pause up this pondering that you've mentioned that, is why did gold become such a valuable metal? What was its thing in so many different cultures? Gold became the metal, and not say, for example, copper or some other metal that can be made into different various things. I've always wondered that, what is it special about gold?
Well, if you look at it from the physical body, we have gold. It's part of plasma in the blood. It's not gold, but it's a golden color. So there's a kind of idea.
A shining, a light.
Yeah, a light.
A beauty.
Yeah.
An encompassing. Oh, I'm getting so excited, everybody.
Cool.
It seems to shine brighter than any of the other metals. You know what I mean? Just because of the color of it.
Yeah, and it's kind of, the like the sun, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of them things. It's just
there's a huge Andy.
And silver's another one as well. Why don't we value silver over gold? Why is it always gold over silver? And it's one of them little things that's always puzzled me over the years. We human beings are a funny little set of people, and we pride ourselves over this sort of gluttony that we want gold. We must have gold. No matter where you go, it's always about gold.
Really, could it be that it is so abundant?
I like copper. I like copper and silver on my body, and crystals on my body more than gold. I don't have any gold. I don't think.
Exactly. And when you look in like the Ayurvedic practices, gold doesn't really come up that often. It's always copper, and it's always all these other minerals, and it's crystals and everything else. And they seem to have all gone by the by, and gold has become the king.
And the biggest thing is dirt, really, mud, earth.
Yeah.
Like, that's really the classic one. Hello.
Yeah, that's the most valuable resource, because without that, we're screwed.
I think we're fucking stupid. We ain't having none of that. Fuck off. Excuse me, Andy. Maybe I'm ramping up for the conundrum this week.
Yeah, I'm going to say you're practicing, aren't you?
I am. Fully fledged. Clearly, that's the excitement.
We're coming up to 7 o'clock. Angie, if you want to wrap it up to stop the recording, then I'll do that. If you've got a few final words, and then we can have a bit of an after-show chat.
Yeah, sounds good. So, I mean, for any pagans that are out there listening, you can mark this however you want to, and I would say whenever you want to, in that huge time period that we've talked about. But I think that the key thing is, it's a gathering. It's a gathering of people, gifting in whatever way, shape, or form, and having fun, celebrating your life, because it's, well, they say it's short, but we are eternal. But and just quickly, the other thing that is, I don't know if it's more expensive than gold, it might be, is a spice called saffron. And what is the color of saffron? It turns everything gold. So I'm going to leave it there anyway.
Yeah, world's most expensive spice. I got some. I first had it from my friend from Persia, Mesum from Iran. She introduced me to this wonderful spice.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it fascinates me that it turns everything gold color. It's lovely.
Which comes up in winter in the snow, the crocus. If you're in a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're bubbling.
Is that where it comes from?
Oh, that's really cool.
Now I'm thinking about, how about in other countries?
Yeah.
Because they don't have snow, we have snow, we have crocus. I'm going to have to do some investigating how that
cool
goes and spirals and turns around.
Istanbul has an amazing spice market there between the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia.
Wow.
Yeah, the trading thing and cultural exchanges along the Spice Road.